Handling difficult guests. That's going to be the subject of this video. Welcome, my beautiful people. Fernando David here. And today I want to talk about and dive deep into a topic that every short-term rental operator will likely face if they stay in this business for any time. And that is dealing with difficult guests. Now, it's not always easy, but today I'll share some very practical tips in conflict resolution that I assure you that if you follow these tips, it'll help you with better reviews and it'll help your short-term rental business run more smoothly. Now, I understand, and before I even get into these tips I'm going to give you, it is difficult in today's day and age to deal with the public. I understand that. I've said this multiple times. I personally had to hire a separate staff to handle my guest communication, and I'm always looking for people that have the qualities of a good customer service rep. Not all of us are cut out for that. I personally am not cut out to be a good customer service rep because I'm an emotional person and I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So sometimes what we need to understand, and when you have that customer service rep, one of the biggest things that is really important that your customer service rep has is that they're patient and they have the ability to let things, roll off their sleeve. Because people can get truly nasty. People can they can offend. They become very demanding. But you as the host or your customer service rep, whoever's going to be handling your guest communication, really needs to stay calm and flexible if they want to resolve any conflict that's happening. Now, when you face a difficult guest, and I just briefly touched on that, it's very easy and tempting to react emotionally. I can tell you that is my biggest problem, right? I don't like people yelling at me. I don't like people cursing at me. No one really does. But because I'm an emotional person, it's hard for me to hide my emotions. So you can clearly see when you're getting under my skin. So it really doesn't behoove me to have that job, right? So, and like I said, when you have a guest who's being offensive, who's being aggressive, who's being demanding, you need someone to be the calming voice, and that calming voice needs to be your customer service rep. And oftentimes, here's what happens. Oftentimes, if you just simply let the guest vent and say something to the effect of, after they vented, right? After they gave you all the gripes about whatever the issue is, if you say something to the effect of, I'm really sorry that this has caused you an inconvenience, and that you understand where they're coming from, and that if they let you, you will work on fixing the problem. A lot of times, if the person is reasonable, then you're going to be fine. Like I just mentioned, some guests, they may be having a bad day. They may be, because of them having a bad day, they're getting ready to travel, and they're having stressors from traveling. The last thing they want to do is have to deal with some type of issue. And trust me, they're going to let that, the person they're going to let out the frustrations on, oftentimes is going to be you or your customer service rep. So really understand that, simply make the guests feel like they've been heard, practice active listening, and give them space and time to explain what the issue is without interrupting. I'm going to say that again. You got to let them vent and don't interrupt them, right? Just acknowledge that, and acknowledge their concerns, and genuinely, what I like to do is repeat back what they said to show that you're listening. This helps build that trust that you need with this guest, right? And it shows that you are concerned and that you are listening, right? So once you understand the issue, offer a reasonable resolution if that is possible. Now, I'm going to backtrack here for a second because, uh, like I touched upon, here's what causes problems. And it's the same thing whether we're talking about relationships where and that customer host is a relationship, right? And you what I'm going to tell you probably already heard, right? What causes conflict and issues is miscommunication, right? Misunderstanding of what is actually expected, and then the big one is unmet expectations. Now, I've always said this, and I try to preach it and I try to live it. If you never want to get disappointed, if you never want to get heartbroken, then don't have expectations of people. The problem is people have these expectations of what they expect is reasonable or what they expect they want to experience, right? So I'm going to give you some examples. Um, we a lot of our properties are part of the Marriott Homes and Villa Property Program, right? Or Homes and Villas short-term rental program. As I mentioned before, if you follow this channel, I said this. Today everyone is in the short-term rental game, including big hotel chains like Marriott, like Hyatt, right? They're in this industry, and if your property is listed on Marriott, right? This and although we're starting to not see this as such a big issue as when the program first started because it was brand new, the guest being a Marriott member has an expectation of what they believe is a Marriott experience. Now, the properties are selected by Marriott because they meet Marriott standards. But here's the problem. You don't have to abide by Marriott's policy. And in fact, most of us have our own policies, right? So when a Marriott, and I'm picking up Marriott only because when we first partnered up with Marriott, man, that we have issues, especially with members that had status like platinum members, gold members, because they had a certain expectations. For example, if you are a platinum member with Marriott and you're going to check in on a property, you have your own separate line, right? You have a members only line. You also get the opportunity to upgrade for free if it's available. You also have your own floor, right? Your own members floor for platinum or gold members. You also have a concierge. You have a lot of benefits for being a gold or platinum member with Marriott. The problem is we don't have access to that. We don't know if you're a platinum member or a gold member. And in fact, we don't really care because we treat everyone the same. The process is the same for everyone. And this is where those unmet expectations cause a lot of issues. So it behooves you, right, to make sure that you're crystal clear on your listing descriptions if there's going to be something that's different than the norm. So with us, for example, many years back, because of our portfolio, I'm going to use Airbnb here for an example. Because of our portfolio, Marriott gave us status, right? First, they assigned a Airbnb rep that was specifically assigned to us and our portfolio. And they gave us extra privileges that most short-term rental operators don't have. For example, we can communicate off-platform. We can receive funds off platform. And in this case, for example, with us, we do a lot of upcharge. So for example, if you want to rent a car, you want buy groceries, concierge service is available through us, but it's not available through the Airbnb platform. So you have to do that off platform. In addition, this is where the biggest conflict comes about, and that is with our security deposit or damage waiver, right? We require all guests to do two things. They have to register first. And again, this is where a lot of conflict comes about because they believe that once they register with a platform like Airbnb, that they don't have to do that again. Bad on them because they do. And for us, it is clearly listed in our description. But here's another problem. People don't read. And you, as a host, need to understand that. Oftentimes, they probably didn't read the description, and it's up to you to demonstrate that it was there to begin with without being argumentative, without being sarcastic. We simply, like for example, with us, when someone complains, "Oh, I didn't know about the security deposit," then we simply reply, "Well, we're sorry that you missed that. But here is," and we send them a screenshot as to where it is in the listing so that they know that we're not making this up, right? So that gets sent. We also get people say all the time, "Oh, I booked plenty of Airbnbs in the past. I was never required to register after booking, and then it was never asked for a security deposit." Again, unmet expectations. So this is why it's important that you understand that and that you try to work with that. Now, as a host, like I mentioned before, you need to be really flexible. And there are times where you need to set boundaries. And this is extremely important. If a guest requests an unreasonable, or if a request from a guest is unreasonable or can compromise your property, then people don't jeopardize your property and don't jeopardize your reputation just to accommodate a guest. Sometimes you may just have to bite the bullet and say, "We're sorry. If you can't follow our rules or you can't follow our policy, then you can't stay with us," and then give them a refund because you may not have a choice, right? Because again, you don't want to compromise certain things. Like for example, with us, we don't compromise on the security deposit. You have to give it. And we always explain to them, this is just like booking, or just like if you rented a car or you went and stayed at a hotel, that hotel or that car rental agency is going to put a hold on your credit card. And that's what we do. It is a hold on your credit card for the security deposit. Now, you can also say, unfortunately, our policy doesn't allow. For example, if someone calls you and say, "Hey, I want to have a get together, I want to have a party," and that's against your policy, then you can do one or two things. You could inquire as to what type of get together they're going to have and then make that decision if you want to do that. Now, for us, we rarely compromise on this, and we always tell them, unfortunately, our policy does not allow parties or gatherings on the property due to community rules, which is true. So, for example, depending on where our property is, but I'm going to use a couple of hotspots, right? Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach. Those places, if you are a legit short-term rental property in a residential neighborhood, you're not allowed to have parties. There's going to be certain requirements. So for example, with our licensing requirement, we have to have noise detectors in the property to make sure that our noise doesn't exceed a certain decibel. Now, in the past, people would allow parties. People were flexible with that. We're not flexible because, and then the other thing is this: try to be consistent. That allows your staff to know what they can or cannot do, right? When you're inconsistent, and not only it causes problem for your business in terms of with your guests, but it also causes a lot of problem with your staff because they're not really going to know when to make a decision. And as a leader, right? You as the business owner, you are the leader of your company. You need to lead by example. And if your staff feels that you're wishy-washy, they're going to be afraid to make executive decisions on the spot when it's oftentimes needed, right? Now, I made a couple of lists. I want to make sure I cover these things. Oh, okay. So now I just went over what to do when you have a rowdy guest. The next and final step that you need to do is document, document, document. Make sure that everything is documented. Even if you don't have this capability, I highly recommend that well, I'm going to give you a couple of options, but I highly recommend that you record all guest communications, right? And make sure it's recorded. Let them know this call is going to be recorded. Make sure we record guest communications, right? Uh, but the point here is that you need to document everything from the beginning all the way to the end. Because if there becomes a legal issue, you need that documentation to protect you. In addition, I'm here to tell you the platforms, Airbnb, Booking, Verbal, they're not on your side. They're going to be on the side of the guest. And they're going to want to side with the guest. So make sure you have documentation to dispute any allegations against you with the OTAs. Now, critical, and this is very important, and this is where a lot of people lose the battle. If you lost your cool and you cursed at them or you yelled at them, it may not turn out good for you. This is why it's important that you have the right people in the right places doing the right jobs so that you can accomplish what needs to get accomplished, right? But documentation is going to be critical. Make sure you document everything. And then when there is an allegation, here's another thing. It's going to help you as well. Oftentimes, these problems arise right before check-in, right? Like, for example, with us, I've already discussed the security deposit, etc. These things are going to come about either right before check-in or during their registration process. And oftentimes that happens the day of their booking, where there's the cancellation policy has expired, so there's no refund. So again, you're going to have to make a judgment decision whether or not you want to take this guest on. But understand that, again, the platforms are not going to side with you. But if you have documentation that they're being abusive, then you can call the platform and say, hey, we don't want this guest because they're abusive, and we don't want the guest to be able to review you, because here's a sticky point for me, and it's been a sticking point for me for a long time, is that once that the day of booking arrives, even if they don't stay in your property, they're still going to have the ability to review you. And believe me, that review is not going to be good, right? So make sure that you have that documented. Make sure you call the OTA, say, hey, I want to open a case file, right? If this person writes a review, I want that review removed for violation of whatever policy it is, but more importantly, because they didn't stay in your property, and because the reason they didn't stay was because of their actions. Has to be because of their actions, not because of yours. Okay? Anyway, hope this was useful. If it was, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, follow me on Instagram. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next one.